The following program is brought to you by the League of Women Voters.
On behalf of the New Britain Area League of Women Voters, welcome to the New Britain Candidates Forum. My name is Basha Maselik, Voters Services Chair and Coordinator of this afternoon's event. Thank you all for being here. I will briefly review the purpose and protocols for today's forum. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization of women and men. We believe that an informed electorate leads to a strong democracy. We sponsor candidate forums, voter registrations, informational meetings, and meet and greets along with other voter services. Today's forum is a coordinated effort of the League, the New Britain Herald, and Trinity on Main. Representing Trinity on Main today is our General Manager, Gary Robinson. He had a few words to say, I think.
Yes. Why is this not making it? Hello? Hello, hello. Oh, there it is. Excuse me. Ladies and gentlemen, first, welcome to Trinity on Main. For those of you that are new here, it's the place to be. I would only let you know that tonight we have an illusionist, all that stuff on the stage, not the folks on the tables there, but the good-looking stuff in the back is part of the props for the show. So if you have some time tonight and you want to see a really good illusionist do some things, he'll be here. It's a family show. Bring the kids, bring your grandmother. Come on down. We'd love to have you. On the other hand, enjoy the debate, or whatever we're calling this.
I'm not sure if anyone's here from the Herald to talk. No. Okay. The League gratefully acknowledges the continued support of the Herald and Trinity on Main for this event and many others throughout the year. The League respectfully requests that the audience maintain an appropriate level of decorum throughout the forum. No videotaping is allowed by audience members. Nutmeg TV will be taping and airing the forum. Please silence your cell phones. Please refrain from cheering, booing, or making disruptive comments during the forum. Candidates are timed in their responses, and audience disruptions may limit their comments. Campaign materials, including signs, stickers, buttons, t-shirts, are restricted from the auditorium. Please check the lobby, where the candidates have been encouraged to leave campaign materials for the public, in addition to information on membership forms for the League of Women Voters. Many League members are in attendance this afternoon as greeters, timers, and screeners. We would also like to thank the students and teacher volunteers that have come to help us today. As stated before, Nutmeg TV is here and will record the forum. The air date will be announced in the Herald and on the League's Facebook page. Also, if you need a snack, the League is sponsoring a bake sale in the lobby. Today's forum is an opportunity for residents of the City of New Britain to pose questions to the candidates based upon contemporary issues and concerns. Questions will be accepted during the forum. Simply raise your hand to receive or submit a card with a question. There are students that are going to be standing in the aisle, so just raise your hand and they will come and give you a piece of paper. Submitted questions will be screened by League members, Gabriela Bakiel, a Republican, and Sue Trujillo, a Democrat, for appropriateness. Questions will then be forwarded to the moderator to pose to the candidates. It is at the discretion of the moderator which questions will be presented to the candidates. The forum will begin with the at-large candidates, followed by individual wards grouped for time purposes. The mayor portion will begin after a few-minute break following the alderman. For the alderman, a question will be posed. Each party will have 1 minute, 30 seconds to respond, then another minute for 2 rounds. We will end approximately all the wards at about, including the at-large, at about 2:45. And then after a short break, the mayoral forum will start. Each candidate will have a 30-second opening. After this, each question will have a 2-minute response and then a 1 minute for 2 rounds. Each candidate will again have 2 minutes at the end to close the forum. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce the moderator for today, Cindy White, a professor from CCSU.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the debates. I just want to reiterate that the rules for audience behavior are very, very important to the conduct of this debate, and in fairness to the candidates, I promise you I will enforce them with an iron fist. So without further ado, I'm going to toss a coin to determine which side will have an opportunity to answer the first question first. That will then determine who gets to answer the question first for the rest of the round. I'm just going to randomly assign the Republicans' heads and the Democrats' tails, if that's okay with you. It's tails, so the Democrats will have an opportunity to answer the first question. And the question is, blighted properties are still a problem in New Britain. What would you do about closed businesses like the old Walmart and other closed stores, and schools like Old Aquinas and Nathan Hale? Democrats have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond.
So some of which that has already been done with the anti-blight ordinance has been effective. I will say that. In regards to blighted properties and doing more, I think pressing the issue with property owners is essential, and working in collaboration with those property owners to ensure that we can come to some sort of resolution as to what needs to be done. There's obviously the city side, where you can enforce regulations and you can press fees, if you will, if they don't and are not collaborating or cooperating. But more needs to be done, in my opinion, in working with these property owners. And we can, I think, at that point, come to some sort of resolution, maybe not with all, but certainly with some. In regards to the Walmart building, that's, Walmart typically rents a lot of their properties. And in this capacity, we've seen that lot vacant for quite some time. So coming to the table, figuring out what we can do and what the best interest would be, not just for us, but what city residents would want as well.
Republicans have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Issues that has also been very public. It's been in all our committee meetings, our discussions for that, and in the course of that process, Aquinas obviously is supposed to be ready to further develop, but there are issues around that with property for parking to meet the various regulations that we do have. I'm not sure the Nathan Hale piece, and I apologize for that, but Nathan Hale is obviously an apartment complex that I'm aware of, but I'll defer on that. As far as Walmart, I would agree with Alderman Sanchez. It's been here a long time. It's really about location, location, location for developers to come in. Very often people say, why don't we put, I remember saying, why don't we put a Costco in at Walmart? Well, because Costco wouldn't come to Walmart. It's not where they want to develop. It's their private development process to be able to do that. So at this point, we're looking at a storage facility option at Walmart, which is hopefully, it may not be always the best use at a certain point, but the issue sometimes we have to have that use there in order to gain revenue.
Democrats have a minute to respond.
Good morning. My name is Yvonne Muniz. I'm a longtime resident from New Britain. I want to thank the Women League voters for inviting Democrats here today. As I mentioned, I've seen a lot of changes in New Britain and looking forward to new changes as well. Yes, we do have some abandoned buildings, businesses, and we all have to find a way how to get businesses to come to New Britain so we can build our revenue. We need those taxes in order to make things work for New Britain. I've been door knocking since June, and I hear a lot of concerns from the residents, how they want to see our taxes go down in 2 years. Within 2 years, within 4 years, we had 2 increase in taxes, and that is an issue for many homeowners, and that's on top of the list, as well as education. But we really need to work harder to make things work for New Britain and bring more businesses here so we can keep the taxes lower.
Republicans have a minute.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the League as well for having us all here. You know, one of the things that New Britain has done recently to address these issues is that we've rebranded the city, and that has built the morale up, not just in the city, but our schools. And people are starting to look at New Britain, and that's going to spark the development that everybody's seeking. With the experience of new, I mean, it's something that developers are starting to notice. They're noticing our stability. They're noticing our growth and all the things that we've done. So that is part of addressing that issue as well. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Democrats have 1 more minute on this question. Pass. The Republicans have another minute on this question.
Yeah, I think that what Alderman Sanders has stated is very true. It's not just about rebranding, it's the idea that developers are coming to this area. Just in the last several years, we've created 60 new businesses, not just the ones that were identified, but other businesses throughout the city, and over 700 jobs. And that's just part of the reality of moving into an incline, an increase in doing our economic development. I certainly believe we can do even more in terms of development, but by creating that image and that positive attitude, it's what people begin to look for. And they are banging down a lot of doors in terms of coming in and asking a lot of questions with our development department and through the mayor's office.
Thank you. Since the Democrats had an opportunity to answer the first question first, the Republicans will answer the second question first. And the question is, schools bring people to towns and cities. How will you work with the superintendent and Board of Education to better our school system?
Thank you for that question. I, too, would also like to thank the League for hosting this forum and inviting all of us here to engage in this dialogue. As a former Board of Education member, I mean, I can't stress the importance enough for good quality schools, good quality education here in the city of New Britain. During my time on the board, former superintendent would stress all the time, you know, that people, that's the first thing people look at is the quality of the schools, class sizes, you know, that's a driving factor to get young families, young professionals to come to our city. I know our current superintendent, that's her vision as well, under Superintendent Nancy Sarah. Now that I'm on the city council, I believe that we should do all that we can on both the city side and the Board of Education side, because at the end of the day, we're on the same team. We should both want our schools to be the best schools in the entire state of Connecticut. And I know that's the vision of our superintendent. I know that's also the vision of the mayor. I know that's the vision of our colleagues, my colleagues sitting up here on this table this afternoon. So again, we have continued to invest in education. I know that we'll continue to invest in education, so that way we can see that vision become realized.
The Democrats have 1 minute and 30 seconds on the question.
Thank you, and I too want to thank, I'm sorry I didn't do so on the first question. Can you hear me on this? Okay. I do truly believe that the school system is our one economic driver in this city, probably the most important. We need to restore faith in what we know is already going on in our school system. We do have highly qualified programs, we have highly qualified staff, we have more senior advanced classes and honors courses in New Britain High School than most of the towns around us combined. You know, the score on realtor.com doesn't truly tell the story. And I want to be a part of what I would like to see as a coalition that will get more young families to purchase homes in this city, to stay in this city, and to raise their families in this city. I truly believe that it is certainly a part of a larger economic discussion that we need to have.
Republicans have 1 minute.
Good afternoon. My name is Desiree Costa. Thank you for hosting. I appreciate being here. I'm a lifelong resident of New Britain, a graduate of New Britain schools. I have 5 children. 2 have graduated New Britain High School. 3 are currently attending schools in New Britain. This is a particularly important issue for me. I think Mayor Stewart has done an amazing job bridging the gap in communication between City Hall and the Board of Education. I think we need to continue to have those conversations. I think we need to continue to ensure that City Hall is at the table sharing the feedback that we are receiving from our parents. In particular, I will be at school events, baseball games, football games, spring concerts, conferences. I think we need to be active and in our school community and understand what the issues are. I'm very happy with New Britain education. My children are getting a good education. I have one. But education is a serious concern in our city, and it's true, it's a driver for families to come in. Thank you.
Democrats have 1 minute.
Good morning, Yvonne Muniz. I would like to talk about education as we all are expanding on that. I'm an educational advisor for the state of Connecticut, DDS, and I work closely with the North Region schools here in Connecticut. And what I see from suburban and urban, we're all working on the same mission to better educate our children. As I mentioned, lifelong resident of New Britain, I went through the education system as well as my daughters. We're all with our master's degree and pursuing higher education. So if we can thrive here in New Britain, we can also do it in any other towns. But I truly believe that there's need to be more work with education. For example, New Britain High School, they don't have a transition coordinator, which is a big need because many students are not being identified having a learning disability so they can obtain the services through DDS. And that is one of my top lists that I'm working on. So children can have something when they graduate from high school. As of now, the state doesn't have a budget. So we have individuals sitting home doing nothing and not being identified. So that's one of my top priorities to make it happen for the students here in New Britain.
Republicans have 1 more minute on this question.
As a liaison to the Board of Education myself, and all our members who have been there as liaisons, and I want to say people like Alderman Pabon and Alderman Rosado are examples of people who go there to so many of these meetings, and we are in constant contact with many of the Board of Education members. The City of New Britain provides not just the dollars in terms of what's provided through our budget or what's received through the state. And it's more than half of our budget. We recognize that. But there are things like bonding issues. Gaffney School recently was bonded by several administrations prior, but also we made sure we saw that through in the very first administration of the Stewart administration, $30 million. The Smalley School is a $50 million bonding commission offer that's going to be happening here in the city. Those are the kinds of things that the City Council does, that the city does in relation to overall education. I think we do have a parenting issue throughout the city, and that's very important to enhance and improve that. I think that's one of the ways we can communicate within the entire community about extending and increasing parenting. I've been a very strong advocate of maximizing parenting programs.
The Democrats have the last word on this issue.
Thank you. My name's Richard Reyes. Of all the people on the panel, I've been a principal here in New Britain for about 16 years. I retired a couple of years ago, but I've been a resident in this town about 33 years. And I was assistant principal at 4 schools, principal at 1 school over at Slade. And during that time, I was able to observe the differences in culture in these schools. And my opinion is when you have a school that represents in terms of culture, in terms of people, when you have a school that represents the actual staff-wise, the actual population of students, that they look like students, talk like students, understand their culture, you're going to have a more successful school. You can pour in millions of dollars into a school and not get results if the people that are talking to our kids do not understand where they come from, do not understand poverty. That's a major issue in this city. And I just want to say, you know, I raised...
That's time.
3 kids.
This question is from the audience, and I would encourage anyone attending the forum to forward questions that you have. The Republicans will respond to this question first. This past summer, with no state budget, there were no state funds for summer youth employment. Would you support taking money from CDBG funds so New Britain can have summer jobs for youth? You have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
All right, I'll take the first stab at it. First, thank you for that question, whoever submitted it. Very interesting question. But I would like to acknowledge, I believe the leadoff was due to no state budget. The city of New Britain, we did pass a budget. Now, however, the state's still without a budget. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that we're the last state in the union without a budget, and that's all out of our purview. That's out of the city council's purview, that's out of the mayor's purview. However, whenever we do come up for CDBG block granting, it's probably the most painstaking process for myself, and my colleagues would probably express the same sentiment, to have to pretty much choose winners and losers. All very good programs, all, provide quality programs for, all the residents and students of the city of New Britain. Personally speaking, again, as a former Board of Ed member, I would do everything within my power to give whatever additional aid possible to students of the district and to school-related programs.
The Democrats have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to the question.
Hi, I'm Katie Breslin. Thank you for hosting this forum. I think it's essential that we give our youth the resources and opportunities to be successful in our community. It's essential that we fund these programs, that we use block grants in a constructive and effective manner so that we can give our kids the best opportunities beyond just improving our school system, making sure that we use our tax base and our tax money in the best way possible. We saw 2 tax increases in the last 4 years, and it's not apparent that that money has been invested in a way that will actually improve the quality of life and well-being of the people in this city.
The Republicans have 1 minute to follow up.
I think the important piece is that CDBG funds have provided programs similar to summer programs over the years. That CDBG bucket of money, if you will, is getting smaller. It's dropped down to around $2 million. Only 15% of the CDBG funds can be used for, if you will, direct services types of programs. Others have to be shovel-ready kinds of programs and capital programs under CDBG. So it limits how much we can provide to a variety of sources, but I think so many nonprofit agencies in the city have requested monies over the years. If there was a way that we could encourage that, I certainly would support that. We do provide a tremendous amount of summer programs. It's one of the first priorities I always have in looking at CDBG funds, and we do that through park and recreation programs and a variety of other cooperative efforts with the Board of Education.
Democrats have 1 minute to follow up.
Sure. So now that we're talking about CDBG, it's important to say and to speak about the fact that the spending on public services went from $435,000 to now possibly $225,000. We're talking about lack of funding for places like the Spanish-speaking center, HRA, organizations like that vital services to our community. To answer the question, and I think I know who asked the question, it's vital. If we're going to provide those services, we have to allocate particular funds. Now, there was a letter that came out 2 years ago regarding the need to reduce this, and when I say reduce, I mean public spending. But the successful programs that we have in town, we need to take care of, and we need to make sure that those resources are available given what you're doing and the type of work that you're doing within the community.
There's 1 minute left for the Republicans on this question.
I happen to sit on the Commission for Community and Neighborhood Development. It's as rewarding as it is sometimes heartbreaking. There are a number of requests that come in. There are a number of programs that we support here in the city, and making a decision about where that money gets allocated. As noted, the amount is dwindling year after year, becomes more and more difficult, and we have to get into the weeds regularly about where that money should be allocated. It's tough. We have a lot of different programs, youth programs, Prudence Council. There's just a number of places where we need to be able to fund. In short, ideally, yes, we would provide money from that program to youth, summer youth programs, of course. But we're up against a lot of different requests, and that has to be kept in mind.
Excuse me. The Democrats have a minute to finish up with this question.
Summer programming is very important in our New Britain community due to low income and the working poor families. They benefit from the program. I recall growing up in New Britain and how the summer program has helped me. And I recall the days that it was hard for my mom to make ends meet, and the summer program helped me get ready for the new school year. And it's very critical that there is funding for the youth, because without the youth, they are our future, and we need to put the money in where where they're going to benefit, because they are, like I said, our future, and we need to work together as a team in both sides to make that happen for them, because it's very important for them to be busy in their community, because if not, then we know it leads into a lot of different issues, and that's something that we need to avoid.
Before I ask the next question, I'm going to ask each of the candidates to make sure that you have the microphone close enough. Apparently, members of the audience are having difficulty hearing you, especially Alderman Salerno. They're having difficulty hearing you.
Well, that's highly unusual.
So this next question will begin with the Democrats, and the question is, do you support Tilcon gravel mining proposal?
No.
Please refrain from clapping, please.
There's so much to be said in so little time, and in doing the research, understanding some of the folks that have done the type of research to educate us on the issues and what it does and impacts the environment, it is vital that we need to stand up as a community and say no more. And if we don't, we are not doing what is necessary to protect the people who live here.
Republicans have a minute and 30 seconds to respond to this question.
Can we be heard now? Okay, fine, thank you. The question, obviously, do I support do we support Tilcon mining? Well, it's a private business that basically has been there for something like 80 years in terms of the mining efforts that they've already done there. The issue to me is simply this. There has been an effort to try to identify what could be done in terms of any proposal that Tilcon might have in looking at our watershed property. That's what it is. A study has been done. That study has been actually requested by our state senator, Giratana, which he has supported that. We have said that a study needs to take a look at any environmental impacts that ought to be done and see if there was anything that's plausible. I think there's a lot in the weeds about this issue, that one question of whether somebody supports the right of a private industry to continue its business business is really kind of a difficult thing to respond in 1 minute. So my position is they certainly have a right to be there. They're there now. The question is how they are handling anything that environmentally impacts our community. And I think that anybody on our present council would certainly be supportive of making sure our environment is protected.
Democrats have a minute to follow up.
So there are lots of layers to the Tilcon issue. It's great to support local private companies that will bring in additional revenue to the city, but it shouldn't be done at the expense of the people who live here. And it shouldn't be taking taxpayer money to have this same company do the same study year after year. That's not objective. It's the same company saying the same thing. It's heading in the wrong direction, and it's important that we preserve our natural resources. It's important that we don't do something that could impact our access to water or having healthy drinking water for our future generations. There's just way too many environmental consequences associated with this project.
If the Republicans have more to say on it, you have a minute.
Thank you. I just want to remind everyone that right now what's going on with the whole Tilcon process is a study's being done. It was brought to the full council. It was unanimously passed by both sides, all parties, to send off and have this study done. It's not complete yet. Our state delegation, our representatives supported the study. Our state senator, as Alderman Solano said, supported the study. And that's kind of where we're at. I think looking to see what can be done and making sure that we have the adequate resources is part of this study. I think if you talk to each person individually, we'll have our own opinions on what we think of it, but right now what is actually happening is just a study.
And the Democrats, if you have anything new to add, have 1 minute.
I say enough with the studies. We're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on things that we already know the answers to. Why do we have to spend $400,000 or more on a study when we know that all the blasting is cracking the walls of the residents where they live? The businesses, Acme Monaco, they're having major issues there with all the blasting too. It's not good for the community, period. I don't need a $400,000 study to tell me that it's wrong. Just show me and I'll believe you, and I did. And it's there, it's real.
Okay, this is the final question for this segment of the debates, and the Democrats will answer first. Where do you stand on sanctuary cities, and if in favor, how do you plan to subsidize this? Where do you stand on sanctuary cities, and if in favor, how do you plan to subsidize this?
I would say by working closely with outside investors, let them know what the needs are for New Britain, and collaborate to see what could be done to increase revenue for New Britain.
So the Republicans have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond. The question is about sanctuary cities. Where do you stand on sanctuary cities? And if in favor, how do you plan to subsidize this?
All right, thank you. Interesting question. And first of all, New Britain is a city of immigrants. We're a nation of immigrants. We all know that. If you would simply look at our team, we are a team of immigrants, and we're a very diverse and unique team. And that's not going to change. The fact that New Britain is a great melting pot, that's not going to change. And I know none of us would like to see it any other way. And I know, we will continue to advocate and see to it that New Britain does remain a very welcoming and open city. As far as us moving to a sanctuary city, I can't speak to that personally, as I'm not the mayor. However, in my role as an alderman in the city, I don't currently see a need, and also I do not know a way to fund.
The Democrats have 1 minute to respond.
So, is that on? I personally support DACA. I believe in the quest of the dreamers. You know, our current mayor, I remember her saying that this was not a sanctuary city, and this should be a sanctuary city. And, you know, bringing programs back such as the help that our Hispanics locally were getting from the Spanish-speaking center, which was eliminated by this administration, would certainly help in that area. There are many things that we can do. It's shameful what's going on with the dreamers.
Republicans have more to add. You have a minute.
Several months ago, we attended the Muslim Association on Arch Street as an example of a community coming to community. A number of us aldermen attended with the mayor to discuss some of the issues and the problems that involve with all these issues of a national nature that may or may not end up impacting us locally. To this date, we have not had those kinds of issues. We have had the police chief was there, by the way, to discuss the details of what happens with any problems that might have because of controversial federal or national legislation. Until that hits us in the city directly, there's not really any need, and we've had anyone on our council on either side of the equation to offer any sort of proposal with that in regard. So to address ahead of before time would not make a lot of sense. But in that meeting, it was important that we brought community together with the political leaders in the city and have a mutual understanding and communication.
The Democrats have one more minute on this issue. You have more to add?
I absolutely believe that New Britain should be a sanctuary city. It is our responsibility to protect our residents, to make sure that they can continue providing for their family, contributing to society. All of them have some important role in making sure that our economy and our society move forward. We should work with interfaith organizations, nonprofits. It shouldn't just be like an isolated issue. It's everyone's issue, and we should all play into it equally.
And the Republicans have the final word on this question. Certainly. You have a minute.
Thank you. I don't support breaking federal law, number one, and number two, I would not want to jeopardize losing any funding by breaking that law. Thank you.
Thank you. Quickly, again, this is a very, very much a federal issue. Personally speaking, I think we need to stop fighting federal fights at the local level. And again, the mayor isn't running for president. We aren't sitting up here running for Congress. This is a federal issue, and it's a federal issue, not a municipal one.
There's a little time left.
I get my statement in. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. My family comes from Portugal. They were immigrants once upon a time. It's a sensitive subject for me. I don't know where we land on becoming a sanctuary city. I am in favor of DACA, and I do believe the city of New Britain embraces all of the immigrants that come here. I think that we've done a good job without these federal assignments or labels, embracing our community, and we haven't had any issues.
That's time. I want to thank all of the candidates for their responses. I want to thank the audience for staying in line, and we will now shift to the candidates for the wards.
So we have Ward 1 and 2 up, and then in about half an hour, we'll have 3, 4, and 5 up. We've arranged it that way because there's some aldermen and some candidates that from 3, 4, 5 who are not coming today, so it just evens out that way easily. Someone has asked that everyone just quickly just say your name and Ward 1 or 2, so we'll start.
Hello, I'm Alderman Christian Rosado, and I represent Ward 2.
Hi, Jarrell Hargraves, also from Ward 2.
Willie Pavone from Ward 1.
Jamie D'Antonio, Ward 1.
Good afternoon, Veronica Delandro, Ward 1.
Hello, I'm Molly McGuire, Ward 1.
Hi, good afternoon, Lamar Bowski, Ward 2.
Good afternoon, Brian Keith Albert, Ward 2. And thank you.
Thank you. This portion of the debate or of this afternoon's forum will repeat the same debate forum the same organizational structure you just sat through. So again, I'm randomly going to assign the Republicans' heads and the Democrats' tails. So the Republicans will begin by answering this question. What is the top thing that is a concern for you in the development of the city, both structurally and financially, to make things better on the tax base and make more people come to live in New Britain?
Structurally, I'm actually very optimistic. Over the last 4 years since Mayor Stewart took over the city of New Britain, we've seen so many advancements in so many areas in our city, whether it be infrastructure, whether it be investment in education, whether it be economically. One of the things that I'm really proud to say over some of the things that have been developed and improved in our city over the last few years is that we haven't had to use any tax dollars because they've come from grants. And so when you look at a lot of the infrastructure that has been improved in this area, it has come from grant money and not from tax money. And so I think that's one of the awesome things that I think we can be optimistic about, is that we have an administration and we also have a council that's working together to find ways in which we can improve so many different facets of our community without having to depend on any tax dollars.
Democrats have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond.
Could you please repeat the question?
The question is, what is the top thing that is a concern for you in the development of the city, both structurally and financially, to make things better for the tax base and make more people come to live in New Britain?
Well, first, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this debate. Thank you again for this opportunity for this forum for the candidates to speak to the residents of New Britain. In terms of the top concern, the top thing that is a concern, whether it be structurally or financially, I would say that one of the concerns is the number of businesses that have closed during this current administration. We've had a number of new businesses, small businesses that have opened, but then recently there have been a few businesses that have closed, specifically within downtown New Britain. And so that is a concern, because the question is, what long-term support are we providing to business owners in New Britain so that they're not here today and gone tomorrow? In terms of I'd like to address the comment made by the opponent in terms of not receiving we're funding to receive a state tax and is grant money and not money from the state. That actually is incorrect. We have received and have been receiving money from the state for a number of years, so just wanted to make that correction.
The Republicans have 1 minute to follow up on this question.
Well, are you guys can hear me? Just a couple of years ago, the city was doing very bad financially, facing a $30 million deficit. Through the advancement of the council and Mayor Stewart, were able to turn that into a surplus. So the city is not facing things that some of the state and some other cities are facing. We are able to use our tax base. We're able to spend the money where it needs to be spent. We're investing in education. We're investing in our businesses. We're investing in our downtown. So that's the important part, is that we're not spending tax money where it doesn't need to be spent. We're spending fiscally responsibly and without cutting services to our residents.
Democrats have another minute on this question.
Hi again, I'm Lamar Bowski. I like to rebut this by saying that we are not actually currently in a surplus. All we have done is restructure the debt and push it to have to pay it further along. We are not in a surplus because many years down the line, we're going to have to pay an increase. Right now, we're around a $30 million, and a few years from now, we're going to have to pay more than $40 million back to restructure the debt. And we have a lot of empty buildings here in New Britain, and we are currently underfunded in education. Out of 169 school districts in New Britain, we currently sit at 166 per pupil spending, which means we spend the lowest amount on our students in the state, and that's something that we need to change.
Republicans have another minute on this question.
I'm very proud of the record that we have here in the city. A team that consists of Republicans, unaffiliated, and Democrats working alongside the mayor in order to have a bipartisan government that focuses on results and not empty partisan rhetoric. This past week in the council, I was so pleased to vote in favor of one of the reports that we receive of our city's finances. This past year, in anticipation of the state budget not passing by this current juncture, the financial team, along with Mayor Stewart and the council, we preemptively made financial decisions to make sure that we were a lot better off financially and structurally to withstand some of the cuts that may come from the state. We found out this past week that we had $1.6 million more than we budgeted in revenue, and we spent $9 million less than we budgeted. That's responsible government, and I'm proud of that record.
Democrats have the last word on this issue. You have 1 minute.
One of my main concerns in the city is that we do really have too many abandoned buildings. And I see actually more developing or coming to fruition. We need to put more pressure on the people who own those buildings, as has already been said. But we need to get the word out that we're looking for new businesses to come in. We're looking for people to occupy those buildings. And we need suggestions from the public on the best way and the quickest way of making that happen. There's too much dialogue going back and forth on what's needed, and I don't really see like a process where the information could be funneled so that a decision could be made. So we need to take care of those buildings. That's one of my main concerns. And also, in speaking with people, one of our concerns, believe it or not, is the condition of our sidewalks and our roads. I mean, on my street alone, I had it fixed in front of my house, but the major portion of the street has cracked sidewalks on different levels, and we need to clear that up.
That's time. The next question will begin with the Democrats, and we'll return to a question we asked in the previous debate. Schools bring people to towns and cities. How will you work with the superintendent and Board of Education to better our school system? You have 1 minute and 30 seconds. Democrats, you start.
Education is really one of my favorite points. In working with the NAACP on the legal redress, I found out that our present superintendent is good for the city. There's no doubt about that. But we need to give the superintendent more help as to what the concerns of the students. I've noticed that there's been a large population within the students who are not being addressed as far as having disabilities or maybe possible behavioral problems. And once we looked into that, we found out there are resources within the system to address that. Long story short, instead of like, if there's a disciplinarian problem within the school system, not to automatically put them in a cell, so to speak, but to find out what is actually going on, because the short of it is, I had a case with that exact same problem where there was a student who was put into a cell as a disciplinarian problem. And when I found out checking with the Board of Education that this student was not tested the way he should have been 3 years ago. The short of it is, once they tested him, they placed him in the correct school, and he became an honor roll student. That's night and day. We need more of that.
The Republicans have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the League for putting this on, the candidates for participating, and the public for showing up. New Britain schools are very important to me. I have 3 children that all attend public schools. I think the biggest problem we have in New Britain with our school system is a perception problem. Our schools are great. I will put my children's education up against any surrounding town. I think what we have is people who like to focus on the negative rather than the positive. New Britain High has more AP classes than any other high school in the state. There are opportunities, there are more clubs, sports, things like that. Those are the things that we need to highlight. I think one of the biggest things we can do as a community is to increase parental involvement. That doesn't cost money. It's about getting the parents involved in their school communities, involved in those neighborhood schools that are back, and showing up to events and taking an interest in their child's education. That's how we can improve our school system. You know, I talk to people all over this state when I say I live in New Britain and I have children and they turn their nose up. And you know what? I love those conversations because I love putting them in their place about how great our schools are and how diverse our schools are and how our children grow up with children who are different, you know, ethnic than they are, and just exposed to so many different things. And I wouldn't change a thing. We just need to highlight those good things and continue to push them.
Please refrain from clapping. Thank you. The Democrats have a minute.
Hi, I'm Molly McGuire again. Thank you again to the League of Women Voters. I would just like to say that while New Britain schools are great and New Britain is a great place to grow up, I grew up here. They have been flat funded in recent years, and as much as, you know, we can say they're great, and that's not going to make people believe us. And I would love to see young families move here and want to put their kids in schools, but you can't do that unless you show that we're growing every year and we're doing new things for our kids every year.
I also disagree with my opponent because it's more of a lack of perception, because I just graduated from New Britain High School in 2013, and we had a class of 900 freshmen, and we only graduated with 400. If we are failing more than half of our student population, that's more than perception. So I think there's a lot of change that needs to be involving and improving our schools.
The Republicans have another minute on this question.
Okay, as far as flat funding, in the last couple of years, we have given the schools $6.something million. Now we give it to them, and they do what they do with whatever they want to do with it. Plus, all the bonding for these schools, where do they think that comes from? We all try to get everything else, but we can't keep jacking up the taxes just to get more money. People don't like it, but we still gave them $6.something million. Thank you.
The Democrats have another minute on this question. Pass. So the oh wait, sorry.
Hi, this is Veronica. In most cities and towns across the state and across the country, the largest piece of the budget in the city is for education. The question is, what are we doing with it? And so we need to, you know, the perception is everything, and it can be a problem or it can be a positive. And so what we need to do is not talk about it, but be about it, and really look at and address the issues and concerns of the parents, of the students, of the educators in the school system, and not make assumptions that, well, if we just get the parents involved, if we just get this involved, it is a collective effort, it's a collaboration of both the school system, the community organizations, to really figure out what are the challenges. And you know, I was honored to have served on the Odyssey Task Force, where we did look at this in New Britain to see what is the dropout rate, what is going on here with the 6th graders that are dropping out, the 9th graders that are dropping out. We had a task force that looked at those issues, because it's not just about perception, it's about addressing the problem.
The Republicans have the last word on this issue.
You know, I think that we have different opinions here and everywhere about education, and a lot of course, has to do with the financial aspect of it. But I think that we have to look deeper when it comes to our education system. Everything can't be done legislatively. So what do we have in addition to that? It's called time. I'm proud to serve with people on our team that not only volunteer at after-school programs at the high school, they coach kids in a basketball league. I know Alderman Hargraves does that, and either get involved with police explorers. We give time out of our lives to spend with those children. And I think the quality of investment, even greater quality of investment, is time with these students that I think goes a lot farther than money.
The next question goes to the Republicans first. New Britain will be facing a huge debt in the years to come moving forward. Does that mean higher property taxes for the city? If not, how will you deal with that issue?
Our debt is rising. There's no doubt about it. We had 2 years of, I think, $80 million in new bonding. A lot of it short-term that we are now paying the price for. I think there's quite a few things that are being done. Number one, we have put in the 5% fund balance that the city is supposed to have. Okay, we now have a rainy day fund for when we need it. That has made us more attractive to investors. That has increased our bond rating 4 or 5 times. Okay, making it easier and giving us lower interest rate access to money. The other thing that we need to do is continue to grow our grand list. The more grand list growth that we can see, the more new businesses that we can bring into town, the more money that brings us to pay off some of those debts. We have had to restructure some debt because, you know, as I said, there was a spending spree for a couple years of bonding money that the city couldn't simply afford at that time. We are working, you know, and, you know, someone talked about businesses that are closing. And, you know, I would say that for every business that's closing, there's probably 2 that are opening in the city. It seems like every week we're being invited to ribbon cuttings or expansion of manufacturing plants. You know, there was a manufacturing company that moved from Newington to New Britain just last week on John Street. You know, those are the things that are happening. I've talked to business owners who say it's a lot easier now to open a business because City Hall and our building department and everyone is more cooperative, and those are the things that we need to continue.
Democrats have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Could you please repeat the question again? Thank you.
The question is, New Britain will be facing a huge debt in the years to come. Moving forward, does that mean higher property taxes for the city? If not, how will you deal with this issue?
So there's no question that one of the biggest challenges in the city is that we have a high mill rate. We have our property taxes have increased twice in the last 4 years during this administration. And I will say that is probably the #1 thing that I've been hearing since I've been knocking on doors and speaking to people in the community, that they are upset and frustrated with the rise in taxes. These are people who are people who are on single income. These are senior citizens, and we're people who are moving out of New Britain because of the taxes that they have been paying and the increase in taxes over the last 4 years specifically. So my answer to that question is that I would not suggest higher property taxes because we're losing our tax base. The middle class are moving out of New Britain because of the high property taxes. And, you know, the other issue is that we're using debt to pay for debt, and that's going to lead to more debt. And we have to figure out a way to not continue to borrow for money and pay on money that we've already been borrowing. And so that's a challenge. And so the answer is that there needs to be really creative ways of how can the mayor and the council come together to figure out how are we going to handle the financial challenges, because we cannot keep pushing it back on the residents, and that's what's been happening, and they are not happy about that.
The Republicans have another minute on this question.
Thank you. Yeah, we do have a bond problem here. What happened was a few years ago, the previous administration decided that it was appropriate to take out short-term bonds to bond for things such as textbooks and school technology. That wasn't the brightest of ideas. So now those bills are being due. So what this council has tried to do now is try to expand those short-term bonds into a longer-term bond so that we can have the ability to pay those off without having to raise taxes every year, because our burden is going to rise every year. So it's very important that we stop bonding unless we need to. So we have been bonding a lot less. Of course, there's a few projects that we also have to do that, but we have to bond less. And we have to make sure that we pay off those debts. And in the future, we shouldn't be taking out bonds. We got to incorporate that into our budget. And our finance department now looks 3 to 4 years down the road to make sure that we will have enough money in those years instead of a year-by-year annual basis.
Democrats have 1 more minute on this question.
Well, he's going to be here in a few minutes, but part of the reason why I'm here is because I'm running with the Democrat mayoral candidate, Mayoral Gay. He has a master's degree in economic development, and even though my background is in criminology and political science, I know that we have to find new ways to find funding for schools and to bring businesses into community, because the taxes are way too high in New Britain and people will feel like they're not getting a lot out of it. In order for us to find new businesses, we should also change the education system. We have to admit that the factories of the past are not coming back. We can't continue handing out degrees that are preparing students for an analog world when we're moving towards more technology. We do the advance our education to shift more to a business and economic development entrepreneurial mindset so that people could start small businesses here in New Britain where they grew up and help bring funds into the city without having to raise taxes.
One more minute for the Republicans.
You know, I want to correct the record on taxes. For many years, taxes were raised in the city while there was reckless decisions made as far as bonding is concerned, also shifting money from one department to the other. So when Mayor Stewart came in 2013, she was faced with a $30 million deficit. And what she did, and I believe Hartford should do the same thing, this is why they're close to being out of money and they need a state bailout, because they didn't take the necessary, make the necessary decisions that Mayor Stewart did in our city, where now from a $30 million deficit, we have a $15 million surplus. She raised taxes at a time where for years we were reckless with our spending, and people know that with projects and with inflation, things go up higher over time. And so that was able to now close the deficit in which we had. And now, because of how effective we've been managing our budget, it's the reason why we have so much fiscal health in our city today.
This will be the last question for this group of candidates, and it will go to the Democrats first. And we'll repeat a question from the earlier debates. Do you support Tilcon gravel mining proposal?
Short
Democrats.
answer, no. I live on Amy Lane off of Worcester. I'm right over in that area where Tilcon is in a quarry neighborhood. And residents like me that live in that area, I feel the blast that sends shocks waves thousands of feet from the site. And while talking to people, while door knocking in that community, in that neighborhood, residents have complained of damages by cracked walls and the sidewalks and the pavement. And so I'm not in favor of Tilcon expanding, because that expansion will then impact our watershed. And so this is, for me, we talked about, you know, in the previous panel, we talked about the studies and so forth. And as our fellow slate mate said, the research has been done. We don't need to continue spending money on the research. And so I am against the expansion of Tilcon, because I live in that community. I've talked to people in that community, in that neighborhood, and that is not going to be good for our environment. As a mother of two little people, I'm thinking about the future. I'm not thinking, you know, we make short-term decisions, but we have to think about the long-term impact of our children, not just for us, but for our children and their children.
The Republicans have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Thank you. My simple answer right now is I don't know. And I don't know because I'm waiting for the studies. I too grew up on Colt Street. I lived at the bottom of the hill there, and I felt the blasts. We are not debating whether Tilcon should stay in New Britain or Plainville or whether they should leave. They are there for another 30 years. So what this proposal does do, and why I approved and supported the study, was it will move blasting further away from residents. So that's one concern. And I don't appreciate someone giving me the middle finger in the audience. That's just childish. You know, it will move the blasting away from residents. Now, as far as its effect on our watershed, that's what we have to wait for the study for. I don't know whether there will be a negative effect on our watershed or whether it will be positive. That is what we will have to wait and see. I can tell you personally, if it comes back in that study that there will be a negative effect on our watershed, I won't be supporting that proposal, but we don't know until that study is done. So I am waiting till the study is done. Now, you know, there are things in the study. It's not the same study that was done previously. It is a different study. So there will be new information that will help us make a decision whether it will be beneficial or not to our community.
I would like to remind the audience to please not interrupt the candidates. It interferes with the rest of the audience's opportunity to hear their positions. Thank you. The Democrats have 1 minute to respond.
I just want to quickly, I attended a meeting in August at the New Britain Public Library, and of my opponents who represent the area that is impacted were not there. They showed the map of what the expansion would look like, and it absolutely impacts where we live, where both Molly and I live, and those in the surrounding streets and so forth. So I think people need to do the research. You need to understand what the impact is, not just for today, but for 10, 20, 30, 40 years financially and in terms of our environment and in protecting our resources. This is not about protecting a company, it's about protecting our resources, because you can't replace water. You can replace oil, you can replace other resources, but you cannot replace water, and water is important, and this expansion will impact the watershed. So people need to do the research and understand it, and as a resident that lives directly in that area, I'm thinking about the future for my children and their children.
Time. The Republicans have one more minute on this issue.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to vote. I'm waiting for the study to see what happens, and then we'll take it from there. Now, everybody in the council voted for this, all 15 members. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to add to that, you know, in the past, I remember we had an issue before the council when they had to deal with a study regarding our polling locations. And I remember there was protests because they thought we were going to disenfranchise voters or anything of that sort. And it's just not true. All we're doing is we're allowing the study to be completed. From that study, there's going to be information that's going to be gathered that's going to help us to make a better decision. Just like Alderman Pabon said, I'm willing to wait until that study is completed before determining where I'm going to vote.
And the Democrats have the final say on this issue?
Just as a young person who has grown up here, and you know, in considering staying here, it's really important. Number one, of course, taxes are important, but the environment is an ever-growing important situation. And while we can wait for studies and all of this, the meetings we've been attending, it seems like the environment will be impacted either way the study goes. Whether if they're expanding, of course it's going to be impacted, and water is just going to be more important in the future. And so I'll reiterate what Veronica said, the future is where we need to look, especially if we want families and young people to stay and live here.
I want to thank all of the candidates. It's now time for us to invite the other ward members up.
And we have wards 3, 4, and 5 present. And if I could just have everybody introduce themselves by just stating their name and what ward you represent.
Don Naples, Ward 4. Robert Smedley, Ward 4.
Jason Gibson, Ward 3. Joel Moret, Ward 3.
Miriam Gerasi, Ward 5.
Francisco Santiago, Ward 5.
Ann Spire, Ward 4.
Bobby Barrett, Ward 4.
Thank you very much. So again, the Republicans are heads, the Democrats are tails. It's tails, so the Democrats will answer this question first. What is a top thing that is a concern for you in the development of the city, both structurally and financially, to make things better for the tax base and make more people come to New Britain? Democrats have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Well, there's actually two things I'm really concerned about. It's taxes in schools. Stewart raised taxes 19% in the last 4 years since he took office in 2013. That resulted in a lot of businesses and homeowners moving out of the city. Now, I want you guys to do me a favor. When you go home tonight, notice all the for sale signs on your way home. Notice all the vacant storefronts and whatnot. Because we cannot compete with neighboring towns like Southington, like Berlin, like Plainville, which has half the mill rate and half the property taxes that we have here in New Britain. So in order to create new jobs, to get more businesses to move back into our city, instead of moving out like Stanley Works, which recently moved a bunch of their facilities to Southington, in order for us to attract new businesses, to increase the home ownership rate, to get more families to move back into the city, we need to be making it more affordable. Second is the education. Right now, our public school system is the second worst performing school system in the state of Connecticut behind Bridgeport. We have a 75% graduation rate. It is terrible that we are leaving 25% of the children behind. And our test scores have actually gone down in recent years. half the people, half the students are not reading and writing and doing math at their appropriate grade level. So we need to invest in our schools, we need to invest in our community, we need to make it more affordable, we need to lower taxes, we need to make New Britain a better, more affordable place, invest in our infrastructure, invest in our schools, and that's how we bring our city back.
That's time. Republicans have 1 minute and 30 seconds. Please refrain from clapping. Thank you.
I agree that we need to focus on our schools, but I think one thing a lot of people don't understand, Miriam Gerasi, I'm on the Board of Education, I've served for two terms. We have what's called the Mindset Academy now at the high school. And the Mindset Academy starts with the principal, Mr. Pinchera, and the administrators, identifying the students in 5th and 6th grade to prepare them for high school. So when they're in 7th and 8th grade and they're testing and their scores are below average or above average, those students are identified all through junior high school, so they are set up for success. They're set up for success to go into this Mindset Academy where if they need extra help in classes, they will get the extra help in the classes they need. If they're taking AP classes and they need just a little bit of extra help with the AP classes, they're able to block off 2 periods to do that. Our graduation rate has risen in the last 2 years that I've been on the Board of Education. This Mindset Academy, they identify and meet with the parents in 8th grade. They welcome these students with shirts so that they're part of the school. The Mindset Academy is for the students in AP classes and that need a little bit of extra help. So we are setting our students up for greatness and success every day that they walk through those doors.
The Democrats have 1 minute to respond.
I've long been involved in funding questions as well as other policy questions for New Britain schools. I taught there for 22 years. My kids were there. I was involved with the PTOs. We need a number of things. We need to fund our schools better. New Britain does not look good when it comes to funding. We are down at the very bottom of the 169 towns. We can do better. It will mean that we have to take some funding from some other areas, but this has got to be a priority if we want to grow our city. So, having said that, we need good relationships, which we as Democrats have with the Democratic legislative leadership. Right now, the budget is in array. Why is it having problems? Because the Democrats are fighting for funding for schools in the cities. We need to get that funding done. We need to get it into our cities. Yes, New Britain schools have problems. We deal with some of the most difficult situations because we're a city. But we also have some wonderful programs. We have wonderful graduates. We have been very successful for those students who are in our schools. And that's where I will stop.
The Republicans have another minute on this question, which is actually about structural and financial resources.
Thank you very much. A direct answer to that question, and just a note about something Mr. Mayoral brought up. There are actually 2/3 less houses for sale right now at that time. A couple of my friends are realtors and will attest to that fact who are in the audience. So please do note the lack of for sale signs when you drive home. The second thing that would relate or a top thing for development in our city to attract taxpayers is infrastructure improvements, which we have done over the last 4 years. Using transit-oriented district money, we've been able to rebuild the downtown area as a beautification project, and we've been able to offer small loans to businesses to help them improve their storefronts and their infrastructure as well. Green ideas are also important for a city of our size. New businesses like green things, and what I mean by that is our streetlights will soon be retrofitted with LED lights and other things like our solar panel installations throughout city buildings, our schools, and a fuel cell at the high school. Thank you.
Democrats have 1 more minute on this question.
Only that the other things that we need to do is to bring in our businesses. There has been a good relationship, which goes back before the Stewart administration, with business in the city supporting our schools. We need to bring them in more to help develop internships for our students, mentorships for our students, so that when they go out to the business world, they know what they're looking at. We appreciate the businesses that have done this so far, and we welcome in others. If I'm on the council, that's one of the things I would work to develop further.
And the Republicans have the final word on this question. You have a minute.
Jason Gibson, Ward 3. I would just like to say, as a father and a homeowner and a taxpayer, I know one thing that will not bring businesses or people into this residence if we're making this city a doom and gloom city. I think the positive direction in which we are heading is the way to advertise and promote and market the city. And I am encouraged because I have one daughter that's going through the public schools right now. And I want to fill her future with hope and that she will thrive and strive in New Britain. And she is experiencing new, and I'm going to continue to lead the way with Team Stewart.
If I may just finish that for just a second. We are an all-American city, and that brings national attention to us. For 2 years in a row, we've accepted the nomination and the award as an all-American city, and that's just a testament to the forward progress of the Stewart administration. Thank you.
The next question will begin with a response from the Republicans, and the question is, now that it's been brought up, why are the sidewalks and road conditions not being addressed more aggressively in New Britain?
Happy to answer that question. We just embarked on a $2 million low-SIP project to repave the roads. And if you visit newbritainpaving.org, I believe is the website, somebody can correct me on that, but there is a full program of roads that are being paved, are to be paved, and that need to be paved. And city residents can actually submit their requests through that website or through the mayor's office. Somebody will come out and evaluate the road based on the need. There is also a large crack sealing program that happens, so your road may not essentially qualify immediately to be completely milled and repaved, but the crack sealing adds an additional time period onto the life of that road. The sidewalks, I agree, are a touchy subject. I live in the Belvedere section by CCSU, a lot of foot traffic, a lot of pedestrians, and our sidewalks aren't the best either. The homeowners do need to help out with some of the sidewalk issues. The Stewart administration has been able to make some repairs to major issues if the tree or the curb work is owned by the city directly. If we know about it, we are able to take care of that problem. Thank you.
Democrats have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Francisco Santiago, Ward 5. Personally, I'm not in any of the commissions to know about the whole paving program, but have you noticed that the paving program just started recently? So to me, it's just a little show. We have this problem going on for the past, I've been living in New Britain 20 years. And 20 years, I had to fix my tie rods, my suspensions, and everything else. And the thing about it is, we, as a city, we were supposed to go get together and have solved these problems. And I'm sure a lot of the complaints have been going on for a long, long time and haven't been met till now. Now, granted that they are getting done, it looks pretty now, but is that going to be continuing through the whole process? I want to make sure that when I am in the council, that we're going to continue to serve our people between the city, between the paving, homes being cracked from other other ideas that have been getting done, and also that we keep ourselves, open to, the people's 30 seconds get a little nervous here. Get the people's, feedback on how everything is working. For one, I don't have streets I live on Elam Street. I don't have no streets. But as you notice that if you go by, every time it's plowed, I'm losing grass and grass and grass and grass. And a lot of neighbors are going through the same situation. It's because nobody's paying attention. We need to be paying attention to that more, especially with the elderlies and everything else.
That's time.
Appreciate the time.
The Republicans have another minute on this question.
Don Naples, I'm also from Ward 4. I happen to be the chair of the Claims Committee, so I know that there are a lot of issues with the sidewalks. And sidewalks are sticky, as Alderman Smedley said, because the primary responsibility for a sidewalk is the homeowner. If you have a tree, a city tree that was planted 60 years ago in the curbway and it's lifting up your sidewalk, then you have a pretty good case that the city should help repair that. If it's your driveway that's cracking and just because it's 60 or 70 years old, then that's a whole nother issue. We do our best with the little money that we have. Thank you.
If I may use the remaining time, the LoSiP project that I discussed has happened for many years in a row, not just this year. The paving project did recently begin, but it's based on weather and conditions that would allow the paving company to do so, and it's over 100 roads each time usually. Thank you.
There's one more minute for the Democrats if you have something new to add.
Sure. So two things. So I do agree. We do need to put more money into our infrastructure, into our roads, into our sidewalks, because especially for those who are elderly, those who are disabled, wheelchair bound and whatnot, it's not only a convenience issue, it's a safety issue. And I don't want people getting hurt in our city. I don't want people getting hurt walking down a sidewalk. And I can tell you for a fact, I walk just fine. I get around on my own just fine. But I've tripped and fallen several times on the sidewalks, walking around the CCSU neighborhoods and whatnot. So we do need to get that fixed. And one more thing I do want to point out. We have wasted so much money and failed to put that money that we could have put on roads and sidewalk improvements into like we're spending money like $36,500 for a Christmas tree, $40,000 for luxury SUV for the mayor. The mayor has actually asked for a 23% increase in her salary while ignoring the needs, ignoring the safety issues of the people of New Britain. If I'm elected, we will put the people of New Britain first, and we will put money towards sidewalks and road repairs. It's a safety issue.
That's time. The next question will begin with a 1-30-second response from the Democrats, and the question is, blighted properties are still a problem in New Britain. What would you do about closed businesses like the old Walmart and other closed stores, and schools like the old Aquinas and Nathan Hale schools?
Whew. All right. I've been doing knocking for the past 3 months, and I've been hearing, the residents' concerns, especially the Walmart. The Walmart has been vacant for the past, I think, 6 years or so plus, and they are asking, why don't we put some kind of recreational center or something in there, that way that it could help with the residents and everybody, the children, and also they were saying that businesses. For me, they're saying we have, I think, we have 4 highway accessibility in New Britain. We should be having tons and tons of businesses knocking on our door because it's in and out for trucks, in and out for residents, in and out for businesses of any kind of sort. But we're not vesting, we're not looking at those things. If you look at the school, for instance, all these schools have been vacant for the past, the place has been vacant for a minute. And now we have vandalism, we're having, break-ins and stuff like that, fires, because there's nothing occupied in those areas. If we spend a little time in making these places, more tractable, we'll be able to get more residents and everybody else to move in.
The Republicans have 1-30 to respond.
I'd like to add my 2 cents. I think we are making great improvements in blight, especially in Ward 4, but all through the city. There are some eyesores that are been here for decades and still are. A lot of those are in progress. People don't know about 57 Court Street, I think it is finally coming to fruition this week for the second time. That's been a dilapidated building for probably 30 years. So, and because of the busway, the fast track, believe it or not, a lot of things downtown are becoming more attractive to people from out of state. New Britain is in perfect position, being halfway between New York and Boston. And the ribbon cuttings we go to that are involving manufacturing people, they all say it's because of transportation. And New Britain is becoming more business friendly in the last 4 years than it was.
I'll use the remaining time. It's hard to sell businesses that we don't own. Walmart is privately owned. I do agree it would be a nice recreation center for that part of town. However, we are hopeful that the storage facility will open. Aquinas has been sold. Nathan Hale is already apartments. We believe this question was geared towards Israel Putnam, and that is also in the process of being sold and to be renovated or remodeled into some sort of living style establishments. Thank you.
Democrats have a minute to respond.
I think we need to talk about 2 different sorts of blight issues. One are homes when people cannot manage to keep them up anymore because of their circumstances. For this group of people, the city needs to try to offer its services and try to help them out of whatever rut they are in that they cannot be maintaining their homes better. Whether this is loans, whether this is helping them to find jobs, whatever their help needs are, the city ought to be looking into this. These are some of our neediest citizens. They've lived here and owned homes for years. They need help. So far as the businesses, we need to be marketing our businesses better where we have closed buildings. We need to break them up. We need to form spaces for startups. We need to offer shared services. I talked to my friends' children, not my friends' children, my children's friends, who are in their 30s, and they have friends who are looking for startups. They're looking for shared services so they can afford someplace. It's something that we could look into and market our businesses better.
The Republicans have a minute to respond.
I mean, in terms of blight, I totally agree. Thank you for the opportunity. Born and raised in New Britain, especially in the Lawler Oak area, the problem is that the city can't just go and take a person's building away. There's legal ramifications that we have to address. So rest assured that there are issues, especially that old bakery in Lawler Street. There is a legal process to try to acquire that building so we can fix that area.
Democrats have 1 more minute on this question.
Sure. So the reality is, I mean, my opponent's actually right in one thing. We are in a unique place to attract more businesses and to create more jobs here. We are halfway between Boston, New York City, the center of the state of Connecticut. We do live in the Hartford metropolitan area, which has 1.5 million people. So the heart of the question is, why aren't we getting more people moving into our city, more businesses to move into our city? And the reality is, it all comes down to the cost of living. We cannot compete with places like Southington, which has a 29 mill rate, when our mill rate is 50.5. We have the 4th highest mill rate in the state of Connecticut. We need to bring our taxes down so that we could attract new businesses, get more homeowners to move into our city, and that's how we take care of the blighted properties. Because the reality is the blighted properties are the ones who are vacant, the ones who are underutilized. And in order to get people to move into our city, we need to make it more affordable.
And the Republicans have 1 more minute on this question.
To directly answer the question again about blighted properties, our opponents are correct. We can't take buildings from folks. All we can do is follow our process that is in place, our Clean and Lean program. And it's not only the Walmart or the large developments. It is homes in some areas. Don and I represent Ward 4, and almost every day we speak with our neighbors about blighted properties in our neighborhood, and that means cars on front lawns or properties that haven't been mowed and things like that. And we do work with our city public works department. We work with some private contractors who are also in the neighborhood. I take care of a house next to mine just so that it gets taken care of. That's part of taking care of the blighted properties, working with the neighborhoods, working with the folks who live there to help their neighbors out as well. Thank you.
Okay, the next question will start with the Republicans. And the question is, New Britain will be facing a huge debt in the years to come. Moving forward, does that mean higher property taxes for the city? If not, how will you deal with this issue?
New Britain faces a huge debt every year. Fortunately, in the last 4 years, we've managed to get a lot more financially stable than we were. We were at BBB-, which is right above junk bond rating. If you're a junk bond rating, you can't bond anything. You can't even get a fire truck if you need it. Now we're up 4 steps to A+. And what that does, as I mentioned earlier in debates, is it lowers our interest rate. So our payback is lower. We can spread out things. We can take advantage of the lower rates and not raise taxes. And we do have a high tax rate. It wasn't something that happened in only the last 4 years. A comment made earlier about how the Dems are much better suited to relate to the state delegation. Well, the state delegation hasn't been doing us a lot of favors lately. And for the 40 years before the last 2, the Democrats had a majority in the city council, and we've survived somehow.
So this past spring, my opponents on the city council and the Republicans on the council, they actually voted to refinance our debt. And the reason why they did that was because we were facing cash flow issues. We needed the extra $6 million to balance the budget. However, doing this irresponsible refinancing of the debt means that we're going to be paying more. We actually will be paying an additional $75 million more in our debt payment services, our debt services payment over the next, and it extends the debt payments over the course of another 2 additional years. By the year 2021, in the 2021 fiscal year, we will be paying $40 million $40 million out of a city budget that is roughly $240 million a year. We will be paying $40 million of that, a huge percentage, just to repay off the debt. I know that some people who are on the council right now, they like to talk about fiscal responsibility, but it is fiscally irresponsible to be playing games with the budget. It is fiscally irresponsible to include a $9 million line item, which they called additional revenue that will probably happen in the future. We cannot balance a budget like that. We need serious accounting methods. We need to be honest with the people of New Britain, and we need to stop adding more debt and having the people who are living here 20, 30 years from now paying off the mistakes of this administration.
That's time. The Republicans have a minute.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure your math is off. I don't have the exact figures, but we restructured debt that, again, as my former colleague said up on the stage, that we incurred before we were even in office, that the Democratic mayor at the time decided to fund for, I don't want to call them frivolous things, they are needed to keep our schools in the 21st century. I agree, I work there, but there's a different way to handle situations like bonding for math books or for technology. We never actually had cash flow issues. I'm not sure what that was. Our council and our mayor had the wits about them to make decisions that prevented us from having those cash flow issues. And recently, I'll just talk about the last council meeting that we had, where our Democratic colleagues decided that they were going to vote against a resolution that sets our city up to be fiscally stable in the event that the state is not able to fund our ECS money or to give us the municipal share money that we do deserve. Thank you.
Democrats have 1 more minute on this question.
I find it irresponsible that the solution to the fiscal flow problems that the Republican administration was having was to pass the buck and push it down the road to the year 2020 and 2021. I plan on still being here then. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to have to deal with those issues then. That's not the way to take care of our finances, and I'm just disturbed to find out that this is the way the Republicans have been trying to restructure our debt.
Because we've gotten so many questions from the audience about this gravel proposal, I'm going to ask this set of candidates to answer the same question. We'll start with the Democrats. And the question is, do you support the Tilcon gravel mining proposal?
Again, Francisco Santiago. I do not support support the Tilcon mining. The reason why I don't support it is because I have been door knocking, and I did also go to one of the forums that we in New Britain Library, and it's scary from all the information that was given and the testimony from residents from around New Britain, Plainville, how they were suffering from the blasting that's currently happening now. Now, if you continue further into the blasting, you're going to get into our watershed, our environment, and you're going into, for me, I work construction, so I know what blasting does. The sulfur that is used from the blasting dynamite does go up in the air, does settle up in the skies, and then it falls down, and that's what contaminates our environment. This must be going on now, but of course nobody hasn't done the testing yet for that. But now I figured, you know what, if you're going to do testing on what's going on for the continuance, I think they should be find a test on what's going on now. And it's not wait for later on and see what's happening. We had, I think in Plainville, we had a whole block come in and say, a whole resident area come in and said that they were tested for cancer. The whole area, 15 residents. And they haven't proven yet that that was part of it, but I think we should test on that.
The Republicans have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to this question.
Thank you. In short, I'm also waiting for the results of the study before I make a solid answer. That's what we do. We take the research in. Yes, we do bring things to the table as options, and I'll speak about what the options are in a second, but I'm waiting for the study before I make a definite decision. At this time, I am favoring it, but until I have all those answers, I won't make a definite decisions. The project will build us an additional reservoir for the future, which is a way that we do sustain our water in our 50 or 100-year plans. It does actually move the blasting further away. I'm not sure where the confusion is about that, but it shifts it further back in that area. And it secures the water, as I said, for years to come. You know, we have had the lowest point of water in our reservoir at one point, and if we had this additional reservoir, we might not have needed the restrictions that we had to be put under. Thank you.
Democrats have 1 minute to follow up.
Well, let us not understate how important this is. The lands that the Telkin wants to mine in is Class 1 protected watershed land. It is currently illegal under state statute for anyone to mine and develop Class 1 environmental wetlands. The reason why there needs to be, the reason why Telkin has to go through all these hoops is because they're trying to write an exemption for themselves in the state statute. They want to write a loophole in the state law which says that they can ruin our environment, they can ruin our drinking water, they can ruin our natural resources, and I'm 100% against that. I'm 100% against the fact that foundations and homes near the blasting sites are being wrecked and cracked. I'm against the fact that the Hart Monitoring company, which makes those devices, they're threatening to leave because they can't take the blast anymore. It's ruining the devices that they're making. And they're going to take 138 jobs out of New Britain because of it.
That's time. The Republicans have the last word on this issue.
I'd like to point out that, well, first of all, answer the question. I don't really have a position yet on it because it's premature. As people who know me know that water is near and dear to my heart. I grew up with it. My dad was in the water department 40 years, chief for 5 of those last 5. So I attended those meetings at the library. I think I was probably the only elected official there. And I appreciate all those open discussions. And as I say, because of some of the points made about expanding drilling and blasting on watershed property, I really don't think it's going to go anywhere. But we don't know yet. So it's just best to wait. We're wasting all this time talking about a thing that's not even an issue yet.
I apologize. I cut off. There's 2 minutes left. The Democrats have 1 minute and the Republicans have 1 more minute.
I am opposed from everything that I've found out so far about the Telkin proposal. I've attended the League of Women Voters Forum. In fact, I ran it. That was held here by the watershed people. And I've attended the meeting which was held at the library. From what we are seeing, they are proposing blasting off a large part of the forest, which is the watershed and contains the water as it comes down and purifies it now. Vernal pools will be affected. The blast detritus, which goes off into the air, will be affecting our environment. I do not feel that we have any guarantee that a hole in the ground that is dug will create a new watershed, because a watershed is only good to collect what falls down. It is not an aquifer, and therefore there's no reason to believe that that hole in the ground that is built is even going to collect water. I am very concerned about the blasting. I know what blasting does to homes. This is a little bit far away, but when 95 was built, I lived right near there. Blasting is a problem. I'm very opposed to this.
That's time.
watershed.
Thank you. 1 minute more for the Republicans.
Actually, I could concur with both of my running mates over here. Is that it's just premature for me to answer at this time. I really don't have a position on it. I would like to wait for more of the studies, the results of the studies to come in, and let the facts speak for itself.
If I may add quickly, I spoke about some options before if the project is successful. Rights to the rock or the minerals that will be excavated is a substantial amount of funding that could possibly help the school district, could help repave those sidewalks or the roads and redo those sidewalks. Thank you.
That's time. This concludes this portion of the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is said that each candidate will have a 2-minute response, and then they'll have a minute each in 2 rounds. At the end, each candidate will again have a 2-minute summary to close the forum. Yep, I'm going to repeat it one more time. I know it's complicated. Believe me, I wrote it down a lot. So you're going to have a 30-second opening, and then a question's going to be posed. You're each going to have 2 minutes to answer, and then you're going to have 1 minute to respond twice. So it's going to be 2 rounds. Just like the alderman had 2 rounds, you guys are going to have 2 rounds also. And then you're going to have 2 minutes at the end to close. Okay, and I'll introduce again Cindy White, our moderator for today. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask each of the candidates to take a slip of paper to determine the order of questioning, because there are 3 of you and a coin toss doesn't work.
They're not in here.
And who pulled number 2? Okay, so the order will be, we'll start at the far left with a 30-second opening, we'll move to the middle with a 30-second opening, and we'll end at the far right with a 30-second opening, and then we'll begin the question period. The timers are right in front, so you can see when you're at the end, when you're coming to the end of your 30 seconds, they'll hold up a 15-second sign, and you'll have 15 seconds to wrap up.
Excuse me. See that light?
Sir, there's nothing I can do about the lights, so if you'd please start your statement so we can keep on schedule, that would be great. You have 30 seconds.
To start my statement.
You have 30 seconds for your opening statement starting now.
I thank let me up. People of New Britain, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be heard. I applaud these women's voters for inviting me, and once felt the same way as an African American and was discriminated against just because you are a woman. I am black, and now giving me the platform to speak. All I can say...
That's time. Sorry. And now to the next candidate, please.
I'm Mayoral, the Democratic candidate for mayor. I want to start by thanking the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. This is probably the only opportunity where voters get to see all 3 candidates and to hear us where we actually get to rebut each other. So I would just want to thank the League for doing this and for all of you for being here to listen.
My name is Erin Stewart. I have been mayor of the great city of New Britain for the last 4 years, running for my 3rd term, and I have a great, incredible record of accomplishment that I'm looking forward to share with all of you today.
Okay, the remainder of the debate during the question and answer period will go this way. I will ask a question. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond, and then each candidate will have a minute to follow up and another minute to follow ups. We'll start with candidate Stewart. And the first question is, What is the top thing that is a concern for you in the development of the city, both structurally and financially, that will make things better for the tax base and make more people come to New Britain?
Structurally and financially?
Structurally and financially.
Okay, I'm going to take that as one because there is a top issue, and that is revenue, that is funding, that is lack of funding in order to adequately provide for the citizens that we serve, for the very diverse group of citizens that we serve. The city of New Britain is very unique, where we have some individuals that reside here that are very well-to-do, and we have those that need a lot of help and support, and they rely on us to be able to give that. That takes an incredible amount of resources. So when you're looking at managing a city budget, and you're looking at being able to set a tax rate, that always has to be in the back of your mind about services, the need for services, how to pay for those services. Because we can't keep taking services away from those that need it, but we have to figure out how to balance. And balancing is a very, very important thing to do when it comes to our finances.
Mr. Gay, you have a minute to respond. Oh, I'm sorry, you have 2 minutes to address the question. I apologize.
Fundamentally, New Britain's biggest challenge is that we have not figured out a new economic driver to replace the 20,000 factory jobs that we lost 50 years ago when the big factories closed. And as a result, we are a poor community with a median household income of $40,000. That puts us pretty low in a wealthy state. That has implications for everything from property values to the city budget. So that's our single biggest challenge, is the lack of good paying jobs in this community.
Mr. Mayo, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, the mayor, who's been the mayor for 4 years, and we all agree that she is leading the way by setting the standard high since she's been mayor for 4 years here in New Britain. Our taxes have increased to 60% since she's been mayor, and the highest ever for one mayor in the state of Connecticut. You are asking the people of New Britain for another 2 years of tax increase, now in the second highest mayor rate, next to Hartford. This do not attract more people to come to New Britain, along with fees, high water bill increase. I can go on and on for 4 years of the mayor running the city for $1 or more, having 2 mayors. This is why those who are here care about how we are living.
Okay, first response will come from candidate Stewart.
Sure. So no new economic driver in the city of New Britain. Well, we actually are seeing a new economic driver, albeit it's in aerospace manufacturing. With all of the companies that are opening up on John Downey Drive, with Admiral Machine that's expanding. We just did ribbon cuttings at Force Automation. All of these businesses are opening up to provide airplane parts to Sikorsky, to other places around the state of Connecticut and the country. And that is where we're looking at our new economic driver. You know, New Britain is not unique in facing the loss of factory jobs and the closures of factories, and those things happened very long ago. And it doesn't take 4 years to fix the 30, 40, 50-year problem, that's for sure. But I think we're making a darn good effort at trying to reinvent ourselves, trying to allow businesses the opportunities to move into our city, especially in a city that is 98% developed. You have to get very creative when it comes to finding new businesses to move in and giving different types of opportunities, and we've been successful with that.
Candidate Gay?
We may be 98% built, but we also have an awful lot of vacant space. Particularly downtown, we have a lot of vacant space. And we've got projects that were announced with ribbon cuttings or groundbreakings that haven't moved forward. I point to the Berkowitz building, to the Ellis Street Commons building, places that there were big announcements about that something was happening and nothing has happened. We need to focus sustained effort on creating new jobs, and we need to address the fact that Many of the local manufacturers are very afraid of what's going to happen when Pratt & Whitney opens its new engine production run and starts stealing their skilled machinists. We need to be working on developing a pipeline of people to work in our local factories. This should be seen as an opportunity for getting New Britain residents good paying jobs.
Candidate Mayo, you have 1 minute.
Yes, the mayor, and again, saying the grand list of business increasingly coming here. Where are the businesses you claim are coming to New Britain and bringing in revenue? If you don't pay them, they are not coming here. If the small business do come here, they only stay for less than 6 months and not getting no incentive as a large company would be. But the burden is heavy against taxpayers. Stop and think. Why are they leaving? Because increase of taxes, strict regulations, and always delay them. Cannot survive on growth to gain and hire more workers to operate their business. Look at downtown, ghost town. Thank you.
Candidate Stewart, you have 1 more minute on this issue.
Yeah, downtown is not a ghost town. I don't know if anybody's visited lately, but it's popping. Brownfields are the reason why we see a lot of empty factory buildings. It is extremely expensive to redevelop those, costing 2 or 3 times as much to redevelop properties that need severe and serious environmental remediation. New Britain's taken advantage of a lot of the state and federal programs that are available for that, albeit one at a time, but that's an opportunity that we have in order to pay for a lot of those redevelopments. And the Berkowitz Building and Ellis Street Commons are 2 examples of projects that the city found developers for, and they got clogged up in a state system that is beyond our control. Berkowitz Building and Ellis Street, both are in the pipeline waiting for state funding, and because of no state budget, that's why they were told that they are put on hold. Our grand list has grown for a 3rd year in a row. We've added 700 jobs and over 50 new businesses in the last few years, and that's something to be proud of.
Candidate Gay.
So grand list growth, our grand list growth was the slowest in the state. Yes, it grew, but it grew at less than 1%. Our biggest problem with grand list is that most of our grand list is residential property, and we still have quite a few abandoned buildings, buildings in foreclosure, buildings that aren't being maintained that drag down property values. I know that within a block of my house, there are 4 properties that are in foreclosure or just coming out of foreclosure. That brings down property values and makes it hard for people to get a decent price when they sell their house. As long as we have depressed residential property values, we are faced with a problem of having very little grand list growth and therefore trying to address the issues by raising the mill rate.
Candidate Mayo, you have 1 minute.
There are signs, Mayor, like in Detroit, Michigan, exhibit here in New Britain. When the mayor tells voters we cannot pay our bills, it's because out of control spending. It's because don't have the ability to balance our budget. Mean you squeezing more from the taxpayer. What they don't have. Mayor, look at the people here. Look at them. Let me tell them what you once said. We need to increase taxes to pay payroll. Now look at me. Didn't you say this?
Okay. The second question will start off with Candidate Gay. New Britain will be facing a huge debt in the years to come. Moving forward, does that mean higher property taxes for the city? If not, how will you deal with this issue?
I'm glad that question was raised. The mayor has made her campaign all about her fixing the city finances. And I've got here the William Blair bond report. I'd hoped to be able to use a bigger version of it. But what it shows was that we refinanced our debt to bring down the payments last year so that we could show a pre-election year surplus. And the cost of doing that is that our debt service will spike at almost $40 million just 3 years from now in 2021, fiscal year 2021. We have a real serious budget problem. We're trapped in this cycle of having to refinance debt because we can't afford it this year, so we have to refinance it and push it off a couple more years. That the mayor hasn't solved the problem, she's just kicked the can down the road a couple of years. And that is going to be an ongoing problem. We're getting close to the situation of Hartford where they are unable to pay their debt. And in their case, they're unable to refinance it either. But that's the situation. We have not solved our budget problems.
Candidate Mayo, you have 2 minutes.
As you know, you cannot become mayor without balancing the budget. 4 years, Mayor Stewart have not balanced the budget. They've been tax. She won another 2 years of tax. Well, she's gone around telling people our grand list is up. Well, no reason why the taxes come down. Grand list taking care of their expense. Now, if the grand list is low, then you got to go up on taxes. Well, business are not here. The revenue, she have no answer to why taxes keep going up for 4 years and want another 2 years. The taxpayer had enough. You cannot vote for another 2 years tax increase. Thank you.
Candidate Stewart, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So I think that I've proved myself very well. And to say that we are close to the situation of Hartford, we were in Hartford's situation 4 years ago. I took office, there was a $30 million budget deficit. You don't solve that by, magic, waving a magic wand. We rolled our sleeves up and got to work, even though I had people whispering in my ear saying, file for bankruptcy, it's going to be the easiest thing for you to do. Absolutely not. You don't do that. We would be the laughingstock of the state of Connecticut if we had done that 4 years ago. We rolled up our sleeves, we got to work, we went line item by line item through that budget, consolidating resources, eliminating positions, reworking union contracts together with our unions in order to be able to achieve savings. We still have far to go. I'm not saying that the problem is solved, not by any means, but to have a spike or a debt increase by as much as what we were expecting this year, you would have to raise taxes to pay for that. There's no way. When you have debt payments that are more than your entire fire department, how are you supposed to manage that? Eliminate the fire department? I don't think so. Prudent financial management is what the city needs, what it continues to need, and I've shown that I have the ability to do that time and time again. It's not an easy solution, but you need a darn good manager to be able to handle that.
Please refrain from clapping. Thank you. Candidate Gay, you have a minute to respond.
So just to put this in context, we have traditionally, for the last, 5 to 10 years, been paying roughly $28 million a year in debt service. And what the mayor's restructuring did was to drop that to $15 million in 2016 and to 22 in fiscal year 17, and then to make it 24 in the current fiscal year. What that means, if you look at it, we're sort of here, and then we drop it down, and the cost is that it spikes way up. So that dropping it down artificially before an election is to make it so that she doesn't have to raise taxes in an election year.
Candidate Mayo, you have 1 minute.
Well, it's quite clear. We have a lot of improvements since the mayor became mayor for the last 4 years. But the mayor has gone around giving you false lies about your tax money. It's not going into the roads. It's not going into the things that are important to you. You're a taxpayer, you're a homeowner. Enough taxes. How about bringing up your mortgage, home value on your house? Neither one is talking about this.
Candidate Stewart, you have 1 minute.
Sure, we're talking a lot about taxes, and yeah, I'd love to lower taxes. Who wouldn't love that? But you have to look at your realities. You lower taxes, then that's money that you're taking away. And we like to talk about giving more money to the schools. We like to talk about putting money into infrastructure. Well, that money just doesn't magically appear. You have to get it from somewhere. We've restructured our debt. That happened long before I existed here. And what you're not seeing are the previous numbers. You're looking at the refinanced numbers to give us the amount that we're paying now, but the numbers that we refinanced prior to that were much, much worse.
Candidate Gay, you have 1 more minute on this question.
So we refinanced twice in the last 2 years. And this is sort of the equivalent. The second refinancing was for a longer period of time at a higher rate. That's like using your 20% MasterCard to pay off your 15% Visa card. And in that bond refinancing are things like $500,000 to buy police cars with a 20-year bond. Those cars aren't going to last more than 4 or 5 years. We beat the heck out of police cars. When I was working on my master's degree, one of the things we talked about is sources and uses of funds. You don't use long-term funds to pay for something that's only going to last a few years.
Candidate Mayo, 1 minute.
Yes, I want to rebuttal what the mayor claimed about refinance. Quite clear. If you refinance, why give money to Costco? That's a good question to ask. $5 million just to come here. Thank you.
Candidate Stewart, you have the last word on this question.
Sure, when you need help because you can't afford your mortgage, you refinance, don't you? Of course you do. That's what we did here.
Okay. The next question will start off with candidate Mayo. Individually, how can you support New Britain's educational system as a candidate? Yes, you first, sir. You have 2 minutes.
Well, I wasn't invited to the other occasion to speak for this answer for them, but I'm willing to speak it for you now. I support good education for these kids, for the best teachers, high technology, and the best classroom, small classroom. It takes a day to talk about this, and I don't want to incriminate myself by telling you what is the solution. Mayor Gay can tell you that because he on the Board of Education, and still it's a problem that you still have not reached your goal.
Candidate Stewart, you will go second on this question.
Sure. So one of the questions that I think I ask the most as mayor, when I get the phone calls saying, I want my, bus to pick me up at this corner and I want the school district to do that, and inevitably what I have to do is tell them to call the superintendent's office because there's a lot that a mayor is limited to do with the school district. We give the school district their amount of funding on an annual basis, and they determine how to spend it. So I can't tell Nancy, Sarah, and the Board of Ed how to spend money. I can certainly influence that. So advocating, partnering, having a great working relationship with the school district. Superintendent Sarah is a great partner of mine. I've known her for a long time, graduated New Britain High School with her son Chris, so we have a very unique relationship. But you have to partner in ways that the community can be of help collectively to the school district. One of those things that we are currently talking about is creating pathways to employment from New Britain High School with a manufacturing academy that is in the works. We know that we have all these aerospace jobs and not a trained workforce in order to go into them. So we need to partner with our existing manufacturers to be able to get our students trained in order to get the jobs that are available and the good paying jobs that are available. There's financial support that the city can always give to, and we have given that to the Board of Ed, and infrastructure support too. Infrastructure with new schools, with Gaffney, DeLoretto, Smalley. The city's done that numerous times, and the opportunity that I have to give on an individual basis to through the Mayor's Charitable Fund that has gone in small but very meaningful ways to buy new uniforms for our football teams, softball teams. It's been very gratifying.
Candidate Gay?
So I serve on the Board of Education, and that has been an interesting experience. I've always believed that you can't fix a problem until you acknowledge that you have a problem. And there are lots of great teachers who work in our schools. We have some really good programs in our schools, but we have to acknowledge that we have issues with the graduation rate and with, much earlier than that, with students reading and computing at grade level in elementary school. And we're not going to fix the graduation rate when we continue to have kids who can't read by the end of third grade. When we have more than half of our kids in middle school unable to compute to do math at anything close to grade level. So as much as I understand the need to encourage people, I also feel, to encourage our teachers, to encourage our students, we have to also acknowledge that we've got an issue and we need to focus on solutions to the problems. That we need to marshal our resources and put them in places where we can have the biggest impact. Because God knows we don't have enough resources in our school district. We rank 167th out of 169 towns in per pupil spending.
Candidate Mayo, you have 1 minute.
Can I rebuttal? Well, I expect Mayor Gay would say the school system is thinning itself out too much. And we have to pull back and put our heads together and unify the city along with ideals and make things possible, happening for the best for the kids. Money is not always the solution, but when we do invest, we have to invest where it can take us another 10 years in technology, the schools, the classroom, and save the taxpayer money. Thank you.
Candidate Stewart, you have 1 minute.
Sure. So those solutions to the problems that we have, we rely on the policymakers that are elected on the Board of Education to be able to make those solutions. And those are the people that are responsible for that, with the curriculum committee working side by side with those that are responsible for the curriculum that directly impacts our children. As mayor, what I get to do in partnering with the superintendent is be kept up to date on the new initiatives that are being taken, but also to be seen and in the schools as a positive influence. I just last week was at Slade and New Britain High School talking to our students about futures in government and why giving back to your community is so important. And as a graduate of our school system, I find it very important to be a positive role model and talk about all the amazing and great things and success stories that we have coming out of our district.
Candidate Gay, you have 1 minute.
As mayor, I will do some of the things that I did earlier when I was the director of the New Britain Early Childhood Collaborative. Bring people together from the whole community to look at data and figure out ways that we can marshal the resources in this community to help the school district improve. We focused back in 2012 on chronic absenteeism, on summer learning loss, and school readiness. And we've worked hard on those things. We have been recognized nationally for our work in reducing chronic absenteeism and on reducing summer learning loss. That came by bringing together a coalition of organizations and service providers in this community to address real problems in the school district.
Candidate Mayo, 1 more minute on this question.
Yes. You cannot say as a candidate for mayor, we need to increase taxes to improve certain things. But school is inedible sometimes. No matter how you look at it. I am pro-educated. Pro, what I mean, I like. I am supporting the education in every way I possibly can. Thank you.
Candidate Stewart, 1 more minute.
Sure, and all the things that candidate Gay said are very points that are well taken, and it was a pleasure to work collaboratively with the Coalition for New Britain's Youth on all of those items.
Candidate Gay, you have the final say.
We're still going on this one?
The same question. Yeah, I know.
Okay. I think I've actually said enough on this.
Okay. We'll move to the next question then, and we'll begin with candidate Stewart. What are your plans for economic development? What incentives can be offered to attract more businesses to New Britain?
This is my favorite question. I brought this with me today as a visual. Creating hives of activity is our transit-oriented development plan for the future and our 10-year plan for development in our downtown area and in our city around all of our fast-track stations. This plan is an economic development plan. We worked extremely hard for a year and a half partnering with many different organizations to be able to come up with this plan, also involving our city, involving our residents, and coming together to create a plan for the future that will ensure New Britain's success. It's not every day that you have the New England's first bus rapid transit system move into your city, open up, and provide an immense amount of opportunity for economic development. Piggybacking on this, our partnerships with our Economic Development Office have been so successful in creating a system where those that are looking to move into town, to open their business here, to develop here, have a direct pipeline to all of our economic development resources. We work together to put together what we call our Economic Development Toolbox. That is a list, and it's about 35 pages long, of every incentive that the city, state, or federal government offers, which also comes with what we call the Mayor's Business Roundtable. Those that are interested in opening up businesses here and that are serious about it, we bring them together. They get one-stop shopping. They meet with me, economic development, city plan, zoning, Department of Community Development, all at once to talk about their plans and how we can make their plans a reality. I'm very proud of the work that we've been able to do on that, and I'm very positive that we have set New Britain on the path for a successful future when it comes to economic development.
Candidate Gay, you go second on this question.
I think it's very important that we take advantage of the opportunity created through the busway and not repeat the mistakes that West Hartford made, where the transit-oriented development that they got across from a fast-track station was a gas station. You've got to be very intentional about this, and there are clearly some ways that you can do transit-oriented development that can contribute to building the grand list in New Britain. I'm most interested in things that produce jobs for New Britain residents, and particularly looking at any of those kinds of projects where there are public dollars to make sure that we're getting some jobs for New Britain residents in the development of those. Projects like Costco were supposed to create jobs for New Britain residents and really haven't. There were not many people on the construction work, and there are not that many people who are working there who are from New Britain. So as far as incentives to bring businesses to town, we need to be marketing the space that we have available. We need to be working with the local manufacturers that we have now to help them grow, and looking at other complementary businesses within their industry type that can help strengthen their business. So all of those things are approaches we need to use.
Candidate Mayo, you have 2 minutes.
Yes. As you know, for the last 4 years, we have the same business that Mayor Stewart have hired outside business for doing a lot of our contract work here in New Britain. We got business here can do just about the same thing. They deserve these jobs. We need to hire more our own people for jobs want to come here in New Britain and lower the taxes. Encourage the business that we are business friendly. We're going to work with you and without delaying your comment here in New Britain for months and months. In every shape or form, that local business need our help as well. We have to cater to them too, in many ways. Otherwise, they're going to close down. And it's hard to get them back in. It's one business I went to down on Osgood, and he's not happy. And a lot of other business not happy too. So in order for us to understand our small business so they can grow, we must reduce the taxes so they can hire more our city residents. Thank you.
Candidate Stewart, you have 1 minute.
George, you need a plan. You need a plan. Again, it doesn't take 4 years to transform and recreate a community that has been damaged over years and years, resulting from a highway that was put through the middle of us. We all know that story. When the highway was put in, the businesses moved out. Factories started leaving because of economic conditions across the nation. That wasn't any fault of ours as a city. That was just a trend that we needed to plan for. We're planning for that based off of the CT Fast Track now. Personally, I think the plans should have been done long before Fast Track moved in, but when I took office, Fast Track opened up about 4 months later. So putting this plan together is what ensures a successful future. I mean, we've seen the most private investment in New Britain in decades. And as for Costco not hiring New Britain residents, I know at least a lot of, I can give you some names of people to call if you'd like to ask them how Costco treats them.
Candidate Gay, 1 minute.
So we do need to have a plan for development. The transit-oriented development is just one piece of development. It's particularly focused around the fast-track stations. But we need a broader plan for development. When you look at New Britain's downtown and you compare it to other downtowns, it's still pretty dead. When I look at Middletown compared to what it was 20 years ago, Middletown's downtown looked very much like ours. Lots of empty storefronts and not much activity. Downtown after dark is pretty dead. And that's why I think we need to have a plan of development that is bigger than just the transit-oriented development.
Candidate Mayo, you have 1 minute.
What I want to do, I want to bring in more business with development or things that will bring people here in New Britain, such as auditorium, Coliseum, example, things like that. And it generates revenues. If you have those things, people come and go, and we can take advantage of the fast track. neither candidate is not thinking clear that the state will also help us if we ask. Thank you.
1 more minute for each candidate, beginning with candidate Stewart.
Sure. Downtown is, to say it's still pretty dead, well, it's a lot livelier than it was before with our farmers market, our music series. We've got open mic nights that are held in Central Park. People are having events in downtown like they haven't before, and they're not afraid to do so like they were once before. We've made incredible strides with investing and making necessary investments to make our downtown a more viable place for businesses to want to move into. The redevelopment of downtown Middletown took 20 plus years, and if we want to take a look in the mirror, look at Broad Street ourselves. It took almost 15 to 20 years just to get Broad Street where it is today. So this isn't an overnight process. This takes many years with the right people, the right leadership in place, with the right vision and the right plan. And the TOD plan absolutely addresses downtown redevelopment with plans for Restaurant Row and increasing housing opportunities to bring additional people into the downtown area.
Candidate Gay, 1 more minute on economic development.
Sure. Downtown development is always something that comes up because so many people associate the city with the downtown. But we have lots of other parts of town that need economic development. If you look at the east side, the whole Newington Ave corridor, there are lots of places where we need to be looking at how do we increase the number of buildings that are occupied, how do we get more people working. And I will convene a group of community leaders to work on developing a plan to do that as soon as I'm elected.
Candidate Mayo, 1 minute.
By voting for me, I have a plan where a location here in New Britain can generate much more money and bigger business. We cannot take a chance and wonder what's downtown anymore. We have to build up, and we got to build fast. Otherwise, we're going to lose everything. Another 2 years of Aaron Stewart is not going to cut it just on Broad Street. Mr. Mary Gay, it ain't going to cut it just worry about one other session. It's the whole New Britain we have to worry about. Thank you.
This concludes all the time we have, not for the whole debate, but for the question and answer portion of the debate. Each candidate now has 2 minutes for a closing statement, and this is probably outside of the rules, but I'm going to take a risk. There is a question that we didn't have a chance to get to, and that question is, what is your vision for the future of New Britain? And I just toss it out there in case the candidates want to address it while they're making their closing statements, but please don't feel you must. We'll maintain the same order as the opening statement, so candidate Mayo, we'll begin with you. 2 minutes for closing.
Okay. And again, with your help, we must vote for people in New Britain want the same thing that I've been mentioned. Many things that need to be set aside, political parties, about the political parties and race. And a strong future for us all to live here. We must start with a good local government and aggressive representations for state and federal government to push for more fundings, willing to work together, able to sit down together and balance the budget like intelligent people will do. If we have a good leader, we can turn things around simply by working together and caring for one another. Thank you.
Candidate Gay.
So my vision for New Britain is a place that is thriving, where there are good paying jobs, where we celebrate the diversity of our community, and we understand that that diversity is one of the big selling points for this city. You can get things on Broad Street, you can't get at a mall. We ought to have similar kinds of themed business districts for the Latino community and for the growing Arabic-speaking population. We need to make this the city for all people that we once called it. And We need to build the economic development in this community, increase the property values so that we can bring the mill rate down. That I hear over and over again from people, their concerns about whether they can stay in their homes, whether they can continue to afford increasing taxes and increasing water bills while they live on a fixed income. We need to be addressing the quality of life issues that I've heard over and over again from people all over the city, different issues in different places, but that means we need to have a responsive city government and one that truly reflects the diversity of our community. I am eager to work with the very diverse slate that I have. This is the first time that either party has put up a slate that is half women and half people of color. I am looking forward to working with them to try and right the ship of city government, to address the huge spike in debt that we are facing coming down the road, and to make New Britain the place that we all want it to be.
Candidate Stewart.
Thank you. We've been open, we've been responsive, we've opened our doors time and time again to listen to what our residents want. We've been responsive to what our residents want. We've addressed the concerns and begun to address the serious problems that our community has. The work is not done. It doesn't take 4 years to transform a community and to turn a community around from a very depressed state into the successes that we've had. And in 4 years, we've made astronomical successes, nationally recognized successes. And for that, we have a lot to be proud of. That happens with good judgment, good leadership, strong management skills. That doesn't just happen by putting someone in because of a political party. That's not what we care about. And I put together a bipartisan team to run for our council this year because it's not about that. It's not about Democrat or Republican. It's not about any of that. It's about what's good for the city of New Britain, the city that we were all born, some of us raised in, grew up in, still live here, are going to raise our families here. That's what's important when you elect a leader and you elect somebody to care about your community and provide that plan for the future. We have our plan for the future. We need to get to work on implementing it. And we can't stray from that because if you were to derail the plan right now, you ruin everything that's already been done. You ruin the ability to improve the quality of life for our residents. That vision for the future is exactly what we say when we say, come and experience the new in New Britain. Thank you.
This concludes the debate and today's forum. On behalf of the League of Women Voters and of all of the candidates, I want to thank everyone for their respect and their attention. This truly is democracy in action, and the League is supporting that. So thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon.